so I can. Here we go. All right. Welcome back to the Ancestor Architect Podcast. It is me. It is I. It is he, Coach Goodlow. Proud to be here with Coach Kyle Adams from the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff. I just want to share a little bit about him before we dive into this conversation. Kyle Adams is a transformational servant leader, motivational speaker, coach, and consultant with expertise in higher education and athletic coaching. He has experience in student recruitment, advocacy, retention, counseling, programming, and development. With over 2 decades of experience as a college basketball coach, Adams has strived to create inclusive environments that provide students with transformative experiences that are not only conducive to their social, emotional, and academic growth, but also awaken their sense of commitment to social justice and community development. In 2018, Adams created It's Bigger Than the Ball, LLC, a leadership development company committed to providing consultation, organizational development, and resources to coaches, leaders, schools, and businesses to help them further their self and organizational awareness, thus providing them with the dexterity and aptitude requisite in providing transformative learning experiences for the next generation of leaders. His clients include...
That's a word salad for you.
Yeah, absolutely. His clients include the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, Lincoln University, Kentucky State University, College of Charleston, and Scranton Preparatory School. Coach Adams is also the host of the highly regarded It's Bigger Than the Ball podcast on the Apple Podcast platform. Adams serves as the associate head women's basketball coach at the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, UAPB. Coach Adams holds a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Cheney University and a Master of Education in Leadership from the University of Rio Grande here in Texas, or Rio Grande everywhere else in the world.
Coach it's actually it's in Ohio, Will.
That's wild. It's in Ohio. They call it the Rio Grande, right?
But here's the thing. They call it Rio Grande. So like to rhyme with Ohio,
right?
They call it Rio Grande. Yep.
Hey, the people in Ohio, serious business. Shout out to the Buckeyes. OHIO. You know, my best friend played at Ohio State. They call him the Buckeye Blur.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. The Buckeye Blur.
The Buckeye Blur. That was the coldest brother in pads I think I've ever seen. And I played with some cold brothers.
I believe it. Well, thank you, man. I'm excited to be on the pod. Love the work that you and Lizette do. And you all are definitely, allies in this thing that we're out here trying to do. So man, I always love when I get to spend time with y'all.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you, man. I gotta tell you, man, we just watched the video this morning. I know I shared it with you. That threw me off. But that reminded me we got to get to work.
Yeah.
We got to keep working, right?
No question.
Man, before we dive too deep into the convo, just tell the people about what you are doing, man. What's going on in the Kyle Adams COVID-19 world?
Oh man, this has been a really interesting time in that, when everything went down, I got an opportunity to return home. We had finished our season, and as COVID-19 hit Pine Bluff, Arkansas, we were returning to Arkansas from Houston in our conference tournament. And when we arrived to campus, we actually learned that the school had shut down, that there was a confirmed case in Pine Bluff.
Oh, wow.
At that point, we met with our student athletes that night, made arrangements for them to get home. Mm-hmm. We had a recruiting meeting that Thursday. And then that Friday, I was on the road, ready to drive 16 hours back to Mason Xavier Adams. So, but with this time, it's been really interesting, Will, in that this has provided me I haven't had this opportunity to spend this much time with my son in years, and just based around coaching and ripping and running. With all that entails, I've had an opportunity to spend a lot of time with him. but it's also given me a great deal of time to work on different projects
Right.
and to really expand myself and work on some things that I may not previously had an opportunity to work on. I've been doing a lot of writing.
Okay.
And this morning I'm in the process of putting together a webinar Zoom call of sorts with Dr. Emmett Lee Gill,
Awesome.
another one of our allies, just giving him an opportunity to present to coaches, to leaders, just about what this looks like and how we need to be showing up for our student athletes right now, but also what this looks like on the other side of it.
Right.
And I think, it's important for coaches, especially, when you think about school, low resource institutions, a lot of bigger schools, when we met Dr. Gill, when I met Dr. Gill, he was working at the University of Texas in student athlete development.
Right.
And to see that and to see the impact and knowing who he is and his motivations, but to see an institution have a resource like him, and then to know that a lot of low resource institutions don't have those type of people. They don't have that type of resource or connection to those type of resources. That's always been something I've always thought a lot about that. And then just having an opportunity to connect with Doc last week and just asking him, would he be interested in putting something on for, some coaches that may not have access, or just may not, or what they need to be thinking about, because I think the thing that we're going to deal with, as we see things starting to open back up, is competition kicks in and we think we're behind as coaches. So we're rushing kids to do things. And I think we really need to take our time and with our kids, because with our kids and our staff, our employees, we don't know what people have had to deal with while they've been away from us. So I thought it'd be really interesting to have him kind of present and open up, present him to some coaches and some different people to just help them get their mind wrapped around what we need to be doing. So I've really, to your question, I've really tried to remain busy and be productive. And it's been fun. Well, it really has. It's been fun.
That's awesome. Cause I know when you said you hit that 16 hours to get to Mason, man, I understood that immediately. The destination is simple.
Yep.
I'm getting
no doubt.
And so no, that's amazing. So now when will that project, when do you anticipate that project with you?
I'm actually I'm getting the graphic and everything done right now.
Okay.
And I have to confirm a time with Dr. Gill, because he's there with you all on Central Time. So I want to make sure it works for him. But our date right now is next Wednesday.
Okay.
So I'm working on the flyer right now, and I'll make sure that you get it, and it'll be posted on all my social media outlets as well as on the website. But I'm gonna pump it all this weekend, man. I think we know the power of Dr. Gill and the information that he's able to share, and just the spirit he shares it in. Dr. Gill is an unbelievable resource for people in the student athlete space, for coaches, for administrators, just for things you need to be thinking about in blind spots. So excited to get him on, man. Excited to share him with so many other people. So
yeah, absolutely, man. I can't wait. Yeah, please send that, because I blasted out. There is no doubt we need to definitely get that. And then when you mentioned the lower resources, the lower resource institutions, I start thinking about something that we talked about like last week or so, talking about how at UT, you got a Dr. Gill, right? But then,
Right.
maybe in some of the other, maybe like in HBCUs, or even, it's because it's not always HBCUs that are the lower resource institutions. Please don't try to connect that to me, people. You'd be lying if you did. We got a lot of resources at the HBCUs, but what I'm talking about is specifically related to having like these athlete development, athlete performance, but working on the mental health component of our athletes. A lot of time, and I'm sure maybe Dr. Gill will talk about it, but a lot of times in our community, we rely heavily on the church to take care of that mental health side.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And that's a conversation. You just need to pray, baby.
Right.
You need to be strong in your walk.
Right.
But I know that Jesus wept. At least
no doubt.
That's what the Bible said, right? And so, being of just sound mind and body is just something that we all battle with every day, because things are tough, man, and we all need assistance. Dr. Gill is an invaluable mentor for myself. I know for you.
Yes. Yep. No question.
I'm grateful to have met that man, and I tell you what, I call him my shoe muse when I see him, and I know I throw him off every time I tell him. The shoe
game is tight. The shoe game is tight.
The shoe game is tight. Is unbelievable.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's dive into this mentorship. Let me ask you a question about being a mentor. What kind of stuff guides you as a coach? Now I know, and talk to the people about how you transition from coaching men into coaching women, and how that shift took place. Now I know I heard you on a podcast describe that before, and we talked about it personally, but a lot of people may not have heard that. So if you don't mind, share with us your mentorship paradigm, and then how that was formed.
Well, a lot for me. I always tell people I am a product of outstanding transformative mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
From my youth, I had, unbelievable old heads in the community.
Yeah.
Going to high school, I went to high school. I grew up in Philadelphia. I started getting in trouble in the city,
mm-hmm.
and my mother sent me to live with my father in a rural part of Pennsylvania called the Poconos. And when I went up there, prior to me going to the Poconos, I never played organized sport. And my thought was, we grew up playing in the neighborhood in Philly. You grew up playing basketball on milk crates. Yep. We would play. We'd have a piece of wood, and we tack it up to the electricity pole, the wooden electricity pole, and then we get a milk crate from the local store, and we get a knife, and we put it on the stove and make it hot, and cut through the bottom of the milk crate.
Wow!
And then we tack it up to the backboard on the on the light pole, and that was our court.
Wow!
And that's how we grew up playing basketball.
Right.
But that was the extension of me playing sport. And then when I went to high school, I went to the high school in the Poconos. I was at the time, I was one of 3 Black kids in my class. And I want to say there were 7 in a school of 2,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I want to say it was 7.
Okay.
But so my thought was I was going to go up here and I'm going to teach these white kids how to play basketball, because I grew up playing in the streets of Philadelphia. And I learned how much I did not know about the game of basketball. But I think what was good for me was I didn't have a lot of bad habits because I never really played. Okay. So my ceiling to learn and grow was extremely high. So I had a coach. His name was Bob Donovan. His name is Bob Donovan. He's still with us. Coach Donovan taught me how to work on my game.
Okay.
And from a fundamental standpoint, and working on the fundamentals by myself. And I took those skills and I would work on them every day. I would walk to a local court and work on them every day. And I saw my skills start to improve, which gave me greater confidence.
Okay.
And that paradigm, I applied that to other areas of my life. And so I often say basketball helped me make sense. It gave me a sense of organization to my life.
Ah, okay.
And as I continued on through high school and on through college, I just had figures in my life, men in my life, women in my life, who stood in the gap and just helped guide me along this journey. As a child, I was always a sensitive child, and I shared myself with people, you know, in a way that was uncommon. You know, I share a lot of myself with people, and I learned as I got older that that's not a bad thing, you know, because we look at it as people will try to take advantage of you because you're a helper or because you're, you know, you have sensitivities to people. But I learned how to guard my heart, but also to be more courageous in sharing. As I had an unbelievable mentor, and he's still a mentor to me today. His name is Donzel Tiller. He was my residence hall director and at Cheney, and he is the primary reason why I wear bow ties.
Okay.
I do that to pay homage to him because as college students, he taught us how to be professionals. I was a resident advisor for him as an undergrad, and we treated that like that was employment, like it was a job. We had meetings. We ran meetings in Robert's Rules of Order. He was preparing us to be professional men.
Okay.
And that had a lot to do with how I carried myself moving forward in life. So I just, you asked about my mentorship paradigm. I've always wanted to have that type of influence on young people. And that started for me a lot as being a resident advisor and just the care I have for my residents.
Okay.
Will, today, if I've 5 years ago, I remember walking down the street and I saw one of my former residents. Now, this is a person that went to school with me. So they may be only two years younger than me.
Right.
And he stopped, he had his wife and his son, and he said, this is Kyle Adams. He was my RA in college. He helped me this way. And it's like how when in Coming to America, when Akeem was at the basketball game and they stopped and the guy that was selling the cake, the popcorn stopped and he just started paying homage and I've always been very humbled by that. And you also asked about my transition into coaching women. And so me wanting to become a coach stemmed from the experience that my coaches provided for me.
Okay.
And me wanting to have that type of influence on others. I had coached for 10 years in college and at different levels. And my dream, Will, was always, what's going on, big guy? Hi. How you doing this morning? Good. All right. My dream, Will, was always to go back to Cheney and coach. I never had that great desire of coaching at Duke or North Carolina or Kansas.
Okay.
I always wanted to go back to Cheney, because of the transformational impact that those people had on me there. Okay. I wanted to be a part of that for the next generation. So in 2011, I got an opportunity to go back to Cheney.
Okay.
As an assistant women's coach. And I was excited. I had never coached women to that point. I was excited about the opportunity to help rebuild, a storied basketball program. When I was in school, women's basketball struggled. But
okay.
10 years before I was in school, 10 years before I got to Cheney, Cheney women's basketball played in the national championship game.
Really?
You know, in Division I, Vivian Stringer was the head coach. So there's a great deal of story, history, and tradition in women's basketball at Cheney. And when I got there, when I came back, I wanted to help restore that.
Right.
But I recognized, Will, how much I did not know about coaching young women. And I wanted to improve. I wanted to learn. I wanted to grow. Those young ladies, they required that from me. So you talk your question stemming from mentorship paradigm.
Right.
I had to go out and seek mentors who could help me learn more about coaching young women.
Absolutely.
And that helped a lot in my growth and development. I consider myself a lifelong learner and someone that wants to learn, someone that wants to grow, and recognizing that we lead people. If we're not growing, if we're not developing, the people that we lead are doomed because they can't grow. So we've got to constantly be learning and growing, not just for our own growth and development, but for the others that we work with day to day. So
right, absolutely, because that they're gonna follow you. So if you going backwards and they following you,
right,
they going backwards too. Right, that's amazing. Yeah, I know Coach Stringer, absolute legend in the game in more ways than one.
No question.
And I'm not even. We're not touching that fool in the ignorance he spewed. We're gonna keep it pushing in the right direction.
Right. No question.
Because Coach, C. Vivian Stringer is an absolute icon as far as I'm concerned. And one thing, I don't know if we touched on this last time we talked, but I'm gonna get to these other questions. But what I want to talk about C. Vivian Stringer, John Chaney, John Thompson, Eddie Robinson. I want to talk about, we got icon names in coaching, and they're not just, Dean Smith. Nothing against Dean Smith or, Coach Wooden and all people of the sort. But there are black and black icons in the coaching industry. And there are also other people of color who have been great icons. Rodney Page is an icon as far as I'm concerned. He used to be the head women's basketball coach at UT before Jody Conrad took over. And that's not, and it may not be a well-known fact, but that doesn't mean he's not an icon. Right. And so my question about the icons in the coaching world specifically, because, you're a coach, I'm a coach. Coach, why do you think, though they were icons, right? Because I know you believe that. And then who's the next generation to follow that? And if you don't have like necessarily names or won't even throw them out, what would it take for us to get to that in this next generation? Because somebody's got to carry the baton.
Well, I think what you're talking about with as it pertains to them being icons.
Yes, sir.
You're talking about the impact that they were able to have.
Absolutely.
And when I think those names that you mentioned, those are all people that when I think of those people, I just don't think about the sport that they coach. I think about the impact that they were able to have in their game,
right?
But also on society. And I think because they were courageous enough to use their platform to speak about what was going on in our society. And I don't know that we have a great deal of people who are willing to step out there and do that. I'm on a weekly Zoom with a bunch of coaches, men's coaches, primarily men's coaches, a lot of women's coaches. Dawn Staley is actually on that Zoom, and Dawn has been very vocal about the treatment of her team this year as it pertains to them being the number one team in the nation, but them not receiving a lot of the same media coverage as say a University of Oregon, a UConn, a Baylor.
Right.
And, she's she's someone, and it was stated on a call. One of the participants on the call stated that Dawn is that person for us now.
Okay.
Especially as it pertains to, the thought of with women's basketball, with Muffet McGraw, who's been extremely vocal in women's basketball, with her retirement, that, Dawn Staley is that voice right now.
Okay.
So it's interesting, man, because that's a question that I often ask, why don't more of our coaches speak up? But I say that in understanding that there are a lot of our coaches that are doing work behind the scenes.
No doubt.
And I think that's extremely important to recognize and understand. And understanding the climate that we're in, that, it is sometimes better to move underground.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of us want to see people out there on TV and out there on the front lines. But when they do that, they put themselves in they put themselves in a position where they become a target.
Right.
And then it lessens the impact of what they're able to do and build. So I wrestle with that question a lot, Will. I would never consider myself an icon, but I do strive to be a coach that educates our student athletes, educates other coaches on what's going on around us. And I think it's irresponsible of us if we don't educate our kids on what's going on. And if we don't, because if we don't, Will, then how will they be prepared to deal with it?
Right.
And, they can come play basketball for us, or they can come play a sport for us, and they can come get a degree. But if we haven't equipped them with any level of competency to understand the world around them and how they fit in it, and bigger than that, how they can impact it, then I feel like we've cheated them. And I feel like, I really believe that coaches at all levels have the opportunity to impart and impact that in the lives of their student athletes.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's absolutely critical that we get that done, specifically, as you just stated, helping the athletes understand their impact on the world that they're going to enter, regardless of what happens on the court, right, or on the field, whatever the case may be. And I know that that's one thing, and I was having a conversation yesterday. Matter of fact, I was having a conversation did an interview with the Iceman, George Bell.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, did an interview with Iceman. So, and I was talking to him, this is with the Positive Coaching Alliance. Shout out to the Central Texas chapter, Positive Coaching Alliance, Spurs Give, in the East Central Hornets. But anyway, as I was interviewing Iceman, absolute best thing that happened in my life yesterday.
Imagine that's historic.
And what you just said about teaching them to have an impact, right? I asked, Iceman how he wanted to be remembered. And he said he wanted to be remembered for having a positive impact on someone else's life. He said, you can keep all that basketball stuff. I just want to be known and be remembered for having a positive impact on someone else's life. And I was like, well, okay, I'm done talking then.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, and I'm not saying that every coach does this, but I know there's a few. And if there's a few, that's too many who don't think about it, who don't think about not only their impact on that young person that they're coaching, but how that impact is going to affect the interactions that young person has with others going forward. Right. And we don't know, like I think you said that in the context of who you're waving to and who you're speaking to. We don't know who we're waving to sometimes, or what we're speaking into the spirit or the soul of these young people. And so I was just thinking about that, and I'm glad that you said that about the impact. And so let's dive into that a little bit more. So given the COVID state, now I saw this a couple of days ago. You were one of the first people I thought of, but it was late, so I didn't send you the message. I wanted to send it to you. and I got to ask you now, this is a real positive show. We here at the Ancestor Architect Podcast wish to share stories on how people and organizations positively impact and maximize the greatness of others. But we got to talk about this silliness that came out in the announcement from the NCAA. So we got football, we got men's basketball, and we got women's basketball. June 1st. Coach Kyle Adams. Lord have mercy.
This is my concern. My concern is that people are making decisions based around we don't know what we're dealing with.
Right.
And and I'm not, far be it from me to I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor.
Right.
But what I've seen is that we still don't have enough information about this virus.
Right.
Other than watching what's happened in other countries.
Right.
And from the conversations that I'm having with medical professionals is that we're getting ready to open back up and we're going to have another surge.
Right.
And that, I feel like we don't know enough about what's going on to make statements, to be opening up, right? Just opening right back up like that.
Right.
I know for us, from the last conversations that I've had with our staff, that our young people aren't coming back to campus.
Oh, really?
Well, not right now.
Okay.
Or because traditionally you come back for the summer workout.
Right. Yeah. 3-on-3s and whatever the new rules.
Yeah.
Right.
Where they're lifting and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them we'd be taking summer courses.
Right.
We're not doing any of that.
Okay.
So I'm concerned. Well, I'm concerned with a lot of these states just willing to open back up,
right,
all the way up, and we still don't know. I just feel like we still don't know enough about what's going on.
Right.
And
right.
and I think I don't know how sincere it is for us to do that,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like a lot of it's just based around the economy and money.
Right.
So
yeah,
it's concerning.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I know that to piggyback that announcement from the NCAA, and I saw this yesterday on ESPN. I think it had to be yesterday. They were talking about said this, somewhere around like $4 billion would be lost, and obviously college institutions would be impacted if there were no college sports or college football, I think it was, in the context. If I'm wrong, I apologize. If I'm not, then I told the truth. But $4 billion. So I think about immediately when I saw that, I saw $4 billion, and then I thought about the cost that it would be. There's going to be, whatever the cost. The cost of bringing the athletes back, right, for the institutions is still lower than the gain.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If we bring it back, and I'm not suggesting that we don't help young people get back. And I understand the economy is important, because if we, if we prolong in this situation, I understand all of the impact. I get that. I'm just thinking about the context of what happens when we consider this.
Yeah.
And who the people are who are going to bring the economy back.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's not just black folks out there. I don't want people to get all up in arms. I'll tell you if I think it's just black folks out there. I don't mind. I mean, look, we know a majority of them football players, basketball players, look like Coach Kyle Adams and Dr. William Goodlow.
Right.
We know that the majority of the coaches do not. So we know it's going to be some black folks and some white folks out there who are going to be impacted by this potentially, and they may not be impacted. The Lord may shine down on us and say, you know what, let's get it in, right? And that's fine, you know. And then a lot of people say, oh, we wasted time, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, like you said, we don't have enough film on this opponent.
Right.
You know, and
right.
we just, there's no film. And, you know, like you said.
I think the other thing, Will, and a lot of people still haven't been tested. You know, there's still large communities that haven't been tested.
Right.
So there's not enough information, in my opinion.
Right. Right. So, you know, and I was making light of our mission here with the Ancestor Architect podcast, but we certainly want to understand and explore how people and organizations maximize and support the greatness of others. And we know that you do that. So I want to ask you a question about a little really close to home. So you guys get off the bus from the great state of Texas, your hoop tour, and you got to get the young women home. Young women. I say young women because I'm old enough to have a daughter that's 22 years old. So please don't call me about disrespecting women. I'm not I say young women. My daughter is a young 22 years of age. Don't get it twisted. I say that, and you go on to Mason. So let me ask you this, Coach. As a father, you get home, you get to Mason. What was that like in terms of not only relational? I know you were excited to be there. I know he was excited to have you. What was that like academically?
I mean, it's been a bit of a challenge because he's been someone that's very regimented. You know, Mason would get up 5:45 in the morning to get on a bus to go to school. And he found comfort in it. And I think this is important because I think we're all dealing with this to an extent. So when all this happened, you know, the school has been good with, like he had a Zoom call yesterday.
Okay.
And they've sent work home. And initially, I had to go get some work from the school. You know, they had, when this all kind of first happened, right, you know, they had it set up where you could go to the classroom. There was no one around. But they, you know, you went up to the school and you walk in and they had some packets set up for him. So I went in there and got that. But since now the school has been really good. They set up, excuse me, they set up an online platform for him to access and get into. Okay. And he can go in and do his grammar. Excuse me, he can go in and do his grammar. He can go in and do his math. He can go in and do his spelling. But Mason has always, like, we've always given him additional work. Like, right. You know, Danita has always been very good with working with him further than just what the school provides. Okay. So that's been good. That's been consistent. But what's changed, Will, is the structure of his day. Right. And what you find is your children, you know, I don't want to use the word regress, but they're not on that same schedule. And we try to hold them to it as much as we can, but they're not on the same schedule. They're struggling with the fact that they don't have the same level of interaction that they're used to. They're not getting the same level of stimulation from other people. There's a lot going on with our children right now. And that's challenging, but I also think it provides us with opportunities to really be more intentional about getting in there and doing the work with our children and working to keep them on a schedule. I'd be curious to know how you all are dealing with it.
Man, I'm gonna tell you what, we all have the same issues, I think. Well, for the most part, because we push Omri above and beyond. I know you know that. Our house is as close to Barnes and Noble as we can make it.
Oh, I know, that's a learning laboratory there.
Yeah, if you need a book, you in the right spot. And so we initially, when we were out, we took sort of it wasn't really laissez-faire. So it was just look, we're gonna learn, we're gonna teach Omri, right? And Omri has packets that he's got to do, packets of work that he's gonna do that just come from us. He's got the online work he's got from his school, but he also has work he's got to get, like his aunt, my sister-in-law she's a fourth grade elementary teacher. So he has Zooms with her to get his math in, right?
Okay.
We getting science in the kitchen. So yesterday, Omri baked banana bread and made cookies, because you learn fractions with the quarter cups and the fourth, the half a cup and all that other good stuff, right? So that was science. Social studies is we watching Gates and the PBS documentaries on being Black in Latin America and reading books and such, right? Or whatever it may be. That's what we're doing with Omri. But the thing that I really think is really troubling about this whole situation, and it's difficult for everybody, and I understand that, is what our children need the most beyond just reading and writing. They just need reading and writing, in my opinion. That's you can quote some James Baldwin on that. Read, and when you get tired of reading, write. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but what they need more than that, or in concert with that, they need socialization. So the social distancing for the little people, the elementary kids, is killing them. Like we have neighbors here in our cul-de-sac that are in the second grade, just like our son, twin boys. Well, when they go outside, we come inside, and vice versa. They can't interact with each other. They're not playing. we ain't doing all that. We social distancing for real. One garage goes up, the rest of them go down. And you go outside and get it in. Yesterday, the boys were playing tennis, right? So we'll go outside later on, and I'm going to wear Omri out. I'm going to get him on this circuit. We got some high-intensity ropes, and we're going to do some kettlebell work. We're going to get some slams in, some sand
ball slams. Okay.
Yeah, med ball, sand bales. We're going to do all this. He's going to ride his bike. I make him ride up this big hill behind the house. He gets so hot. I mean, he's just mad at me. He's got his, online jujitsu. But anyway, so we're doing all kinds of things, and it's still the regression is going to happen, because unless we get up at the same time and do the exact same things that are in his schedule from school, and obviously we need more PE. Shout out to the PE teachers that get to teach their courses more than 3 days a week. Unless we do that, there's nothing you can do to stop the regression of sorts, right? Because these they're not able to be outside,
right?
And they're not able to be in the space, in that routine that you're talking about. And then, because the other consideration is this: how can you do that and you got to work too?
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I are teachers. And so we have requirements of our job. We have to,
right.
We have to teach other people's children.
Right.
And how do I teach other people's children? Because when we teach other people's children, Omri's at school being taught, because somebody else teaches our son.
Right. Right.
And so we have this, it's a barter system is what I like to call it. I'll teach yours, you teach mine, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But this thing has removed that from everybody's lives. We don't have that as a tool anymore. So now, fortunately for us, we are educators. So we have somewhat of a leg up, in terms of that. So the gap for us won't widen as far.
Right.
Now, if we're bragging, which we're not, the gap ain't gonna widen at all. We ain't got time for that.
No, I know it's not
Yeah.
with you all.
Yeah, no,
And
because we're gonna put them on there with you, and we're gonna put them on with Dr. Gill. You know what I mean? Like we gonna put we have
right,
access.
right, exactly. And that's extremely important to recognize. And I think for people to really think about. I
Mhm.
listened to you talk about him being on with his aunt, who's a
Yeah.
teacher,
Mhm.
and just expanding the capacity and thinking about the resources that you have.
Yeah.
So I think that's powerful, Will. I think that's
Yeah.
powerful.
It's awesome. And it's not, and I know somebody's gonna be upset. So let me acknowledge it early. We are privileged in that fact.
Right.
We're all privileged in a way, regardless of how we view it, whether you dead broke or filthy rich, there's privilege in all of it because I would say, even in my brokest moments, I was still blessed to be raised by great people.
No doubt. No
That's,
doubt.
that's a
Yep.
privilege,
Yep.
And so, I say all that to dive into this next question. And I hope that people out there are using their resources. And maybe what we need to do is really just open up more access to people, to one another, right? And our children, so we can find ways to expand on what they know, because maybe the lessons from South Texas may help Mason improve in the East, on the East
Right.
Coast, and vice versa. We gotta maybe that's something we need to do, and stop just sitting around making this strange decisions when we can just tap into what we got. I know a basketball coach with a mean jumper, lefty, right? Maybe we need to get on the Zoom and have some dribble lessons, right?
Right. Right.
You know what I'm saying? My wife is a volleyball coach. A lot of people don't know that,
Mm-hmm.
but she's also very adept and expert in college and career readiness. Maybe there's some high school athletes that need to get in contact with us or her. I say us, but get in contact with her about how to do that. I'm an English teacher. I can help.
Right. Right. No, you're on it.
you
You're on
know
it. Yeah.
and Dr. Gill and all there's a lot
Yeah.
of us, and especially and that connects back to that community conversation that we always have, and is going to go directly into this next question. It connects to what we want our legacies to be, and it goes to what you just said about the impact. It goes to what Iceman said about impact. And it's the Herm Edward question. It's when the book of your life is written, how do you want to be remembered?
I'm, it's a question I think that, at the root, I've always wanted to be viewed as an educator,
Mm-hmm.
and someone who was someone who left people better than he found them.
Amen.
And utilize whatever resource it is that I have
Mm-hmm.
will to positively impact others' lives. When I meet people, I ask a lot of really pointed questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not someone that's going to have, small talk. I'm going to ask pointed questions because I want to know how I can help you do whatever it is you're trying to do, or get to whatever it is you're trying to get to. If it's a resource that I have, if it's a relationship that I have, if it's a book that I've read,
Right.
If it's a course that I've taken, or if it's an experience that I've gone through,
Right.
I want to, I view my responsibility on this planet is to lift as I climb.
Mm-hmm.
And another point that was shared with me young was, I can't make it till you make it.
Right.
And that all of our level of success and ascension is connected.
Mm-hmm.
We're all connected, and we find that a lot of people, when they meet people, their motivation is to think about how they can use that person.
Right.
And for me, it's totally opposite, and I'm listening for how I can help. So I think when you talk about legacy, you know, I want to be remembered as someone who used his superpowers for good.
Right. Right.
You know, I want to, I want to empower people to understand their self-worth
Mm-hmm.
and to understand the capacity of what it is that they can have and become in their lives,
Right.
based on their ability to continue to learn more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that's extremely important to me. You know, one of the biggest contributors to whatever success or growth and development that I've had in my life pertains to my desire to seek out information on personal development.
Right.
Listening to podcasts, listening to Earl Nightingale on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
listening to to Wayne Dyer, you
Mm-hmm.
know, being consistent and intentional about my own growth. And I
Right.
think in that you have to know, you have to know that your house is never in order.
Exactly.
And if you know that and you're comfortable in that, it doesn't say that you can't continue to strive to get it in order. And
Right.
I think that is the most important thing, is that we're constantly striving to learn and grow.
Mm-hmm.
We're all imperfect, and we're all operate from levels of frailty.
Mm-hmm.
But but being willing and understanding in how my journey, how it impacts the next person's, and being
Right.
willing to invest and share in that.
Yeah. That's amazing. Um, that's amazing. And this is going to piggyback on that a little bit, but I want you to consider. Um, I want you to consider this. Let's say it's mm, 2120. Years 2120. What will your great grandchildren say about Grandpa Adams? Great grandpa Adams. What are they gonna say about that guy?
You know, when you ask this question and we talk, the name of the podcast talks about ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about that, I would want them to say that I helped change the trajectory of our family.
Okay.
You know, I look at my family when I talk about my brother and my mother and my father. They look at me as that person who can
Okay.
do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I don't know if it's based around the fact that you know that I went to school and I'm my grandmother, rest her soul, God rest her soul. My grandmother was the first person in our family to get a bachelor's degree, the first person in our family to get a master's degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the second person to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think just in the experiences that I've had uh, throughout life and that the game has provided me, the game has taken me all over the world, I should
Right.
say. It's taken me to states I would have never gone to.
Mm-hmm.
It's taken me to the Bahamas. It's taken me to Canada. But it's taken me the game, and then it's opened me up to information and to learning that I don't know that I would have ever achieved
Mm-hmm.
or experienced if not for the game of basketball. But I really believe that again, I want to be, I would hope that my grandchildren, um, that they view me as someone who wanted to impact this world positively. If all they talk about was me coaching basketball, then I honestly, I feel as I failed.
Okay.
I really view basketball as a medium to impact the lives of other people and to impact you know, as you talk about creating ancestors, and we talk about creating ancestors of high worth and high impact.
Absolutely.
You know, I talk with Mason about, and I ask him questions about what I do and how he feels about it. And, you know, he's 7, and what he knows right now is basketball takes him away from his daddy.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
it's important for me to know, for that he know that this is so much more than basketball. You know, the lives that we're able to impact, the young women that we're able to impact on a daily basis, and then how that impacts how they move out in their communities.
Right.
So I always, you know, you've asked me that question before, and I think it's an unbelievable, impactful, humbling question, because in that we think about we have to consider our mortality also.
Exactly.
And recognizing that we're not going to be here forever, and that we utilize every second of while we're here, to make a positive impact.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that you're correct, you know, in the consideration of of mortality. And I know, and I've said this to you before, and you know, I haven't been shy about it. I was an absolutely abhorrent father as a younger man. You know, I was a teen father, and you know the rest of that story. And I'll
Yep.
share it with people later. You know, but it's like I said to someone this morning in a text message. You know, I'm still walking in my faith. I haven't arrived. You know,
We
so
never arrive.
you're
And
not
that's
going
the
to
thing.
arrive until it's
We
over.
never arrive.
Right.
Right.
And so as long as I'm in the departure lane in life, then I don't ever have to worry about arriving until it's over.
Right.
And so, and it took a long time for me to figure that out, quite frankly. But you know, it just leads to these conversations. It leads to these opportunities for growth. And, you know, we talk about different vulnerabilities, and we talk about leadership. You talk about personal growth. And, you know, one of the cliches in coaching, and I like to use cliches, but I want to flip it a little bit, is this concept of heart of a champion, right? You've seen the old commercials. You know, the biggest muscle in athletics is the heart, right? So let me ask you this: what's inside the heart of a champion, from your eyes?
You know, that's an interesting question, in that, you know, when I think of the word, you know, I'm big, you know, I'm a reader just like you are, but I'm very interested in the etymology of words. And when you start talking about champion, and what that means, you know, you think of champion. I look at champion in the terms of overcoming,
Okay.
right? So obstacles that are placed in your way, you're able to champion them.
Okay.
And it's my belief that we have a greater opportunity to impact, to create champions before we can win championships.
Boom.
Because I think, and this is my belief, you have to have people who are able to deal with, able to overcome.
Right.
Because there's no straight line to success.
No.
So you got to be able to champion adversity, to champion injury, you know, to champion, you know, the different setbacks, perceived setbacks and challenges that you face in life.
Right.
To get to what's perceived the championship, and whatever that is.
Right.
So I think, to answer your question, you know, what's in the heart of a champion is someone who constantly overcomes adversity, and thrives in it, and overcomes it, and deals with setbacks and overcomes them.
Right.
I'm just a big believer in we have to create champions in order to win championships.
Right, right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that you're absolutely correct. And that perfectly segues into the main question for our podcast. And I think that you've answered some of it. And I just want you to dive deep. I'm gonna ask it. I'm not gonna be puffy as you're giving the answer. There'll be no take that, or no oohs and ahs. I'm going to lean back in my chair and I'm going to just sit and I'm going to listen. But I want you to consider your journey on this planet to this point, to this moment, right? All the experiences that you've had, because those are absolutely relevant to this question. And it goes to what it is I believe you'll say here in a minute. Considering all those things, and the little man that we hear back there, little Mason.
Yeah, he's here.
That's good. Considering those things, how does Kyle Adam build great ancestors?
You know, I believe in building great ancestors, and you know, we're on a lot of Zooms about a bunch of different things, about, you know, specific offense, defense. But I've been one of the things that I'm most interested in when we get on these Zooms, and as it pertains to what we do as coaches, is our culture. And you know, a lot of people throw around the word culture and what that means and what it looks like. And I think for me, a lot of my what's convicted me a lot over the last couple years is really modeling what we want our perceived culture to look like. I think first you've got to create a vision for your culture and what you want it to look like. But and I think that's extremely important. But then you got to do some work inwardly and recognize, do you model that every day? Because I think it's really important for us to understand that, you know, and you and I have talked about this, and a lot of why I started as Bigger Than the Ball has to do with understanding that these are not these young people today, we cannot coach them the way we were. It's not a do as I say, not as I do. Young people will not just blindly follow you in that way. They have to see something in you, and what it is you're selling, they got to see it in you. So a lot for me is based around me being willing to do the stuff that we ask the kids to do. You know, I'll go out there and lift with the kids. I'll go out there and run on the track with the kids. You know, I stretch with the kids every morning. You know, I think it's important that young people see you sweat. But I also feel that it's extremely important for us as coaches, as people in leadership, to share our frailties and our vulnerabilities also. Because if we're committed to trying to build a team or an organization, then we recognize there has to be a level of cohesiveness, but there also has to be a level of vulnerability with those people that you're trying to lead. So I just believe that you can't go and tell your players that you all need to share with each other and you need to talk about the stuff that you're dealing with each other. But I, as the leader, can't get in there and do that with you also. So I'm a big believer in, you know, it's important to me that we always do a great build of team building. I think that that's something that you can never do enough of. But in the vein of allowing everyone to share their vulnerabilities, their strengths, how their interpretations, how they're experiencing things, you know, what their lens is, how we can all look at one thing, but we all have a different lens. Lens is, and I shout out to Jen Fry. Jen Fry educated me a great deal on our lenses and how we press each other's lenses. But I think it's extremely important that when you're asking your team to get in there and do that work, that you be willing to get in there and do that work with them. Because how does that empower them? How does you sharing your frailties and you making mistakes? You know, hey, I thought we should have ran this. I made a mistake. You know, how does you doing that allow them to own when they make mistakes? And, you know, I think it's when we talk about how we model, you know, coming back to modeling, that lets them believe that they don't have to be perfect all the time.
Right.
Because so much of what they see right now tells them they have to be perfect.
Right.
You know, and I think it's extremely important to let them know and to see in us that it's not always going to be perfect, but still you can achieve, still you can have this, and that we've been able, you know, I've been able to succeed because I failed.
Right.
But you know, failure is something that you lean into, and that, you know, if anything, failure educates you on what not to do. So to answer your question, you know, I just think it's important that we model the things that we want how we want our players to walk in their lives. They have to see that in us first, and they have to see the value of the impact that it's had on our lives in order for them to want to go and believe and follow that same walk.
Right. Right.
I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no, I think you did. I mean, and I'm grateful for it. I know that's a very tough question, and we keep asking it for a reason, you know, because hopefully, and I think you said this the last time we spoke. Hopefully, that'll spark a contagion in your thought process, and you continue developing those answers as you progress through your departure lane, as you're traveling through the airport of life, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really the goal. And then obviously if it sparks the thought, it's going to spark the action, you know, and we just want to fan the flame of your curiosity for how you can help others get better, because when you do that, you give us permission to do the same.
But I think to your point, that's the part of it that you hope that, you know, when I was younger as a coach, it would bother me when our players wouldn't get something. And when I became a head coach, it really bothered me that the things that I was trying to instill in our players that you know, some of them were resistant to. But over my career, I've started to recognize and understand that sometimes it's our job to plant, sometimes it's our job to reap, and sometimes it's our job to sow. And we don't get to choose when any of that happens.
Right.
It's just for us to share the information. And we hope and pray that it takes hold. We work to water it as much as we can. But you hope that they see enough value in it.
Right.
And whatever that is, that they see it as something that they want to continue to share.
Right.
With how they move in their lives.
Right.
And that it takes on that contagion that you speak of.
Right. Absolutely. And I used to be a different type of coach back in the day, so I'm not trying to pretend to be something I'm not, you know, and we do a lot of work with the Positive Coaching Alliance to help train coaches and parents and athletes. And I usually tell them, you know, look, don't get it twisted. This is not the perfect coaching alliance. It's positive. And,
right,
you know, we're making progress. And I remember how I started coaching versus how I got to, I'm not saying ended. I'm just not coaching right now because I had to finish this degree. That was important too.
Right.
that was a part of a promise I made to my athletes way back in the day that I was going to go back to school and finish. And so I did that. But
Right.
is what you just said, though, to go along with that, and not to blow my horn, but I want to say this. I used to dip, right? Used to
Okay.
have that had a little pinch in there,
Yep.
all kind of bad. And I stopped because I noticed my kids start trying to dip. I said, we can't do this. I don't want to be known for that. And it was crazy. What was it, last week? And I cried. I cried for about an hour after I got off the phone with this young man. One of my former players is a trauma surgeon. And he was describing with fondness how I would yell and he could smell the tobacco on my breath. That's how close I was. But he was describing it with fondness, right? And I'm thinking, man, I screwed this up big time. But he was just saying, without those experiences, from not only from myself but the coaches that he remembered, he wouldn't have been able to get through medical school.
Wow.
He said, because I know what it's like to get up at 4:00 in the morning to go work out. My classmates didn't know what it was like to get up at 4:00 and be on by 4:30. They were struggling. He said, but I knew how to do that because I was a football player. And
Right.
when I got to the gym, you were already in there getting it done. And so when I got to med school and these kids are like, well, why is he here? I was out working them all, and it's those things, like you said, Coach. That's what matters, man. We gotta find ways to just engage in whatever the kids are doing, because you don't know what's going to happen on the backside.
Right.
This kid was like an all-state cellist, and I used to tell him, he wouldn't tell me that he played the cello. I'm like, bro, that is absolutely fantastic.
Right.
You play the strings off that bad boy. Whatever it is you got to do, right? Go be that. And I think when I stopped as a coach, I became better as a coach. When I started telling the kids that I was coaching, or the young men I was coaching, that I coached such and such, he's going to med school. I coached such and such, he's an entrepreneur. Versus, I coached this all-state guy. He was all-state, all-district. When I took those things out of the back of the player's manual or the group manual, and I put academic and social pursuits in there, I gave the kids permission to just be them. This is just going to be our tool. This is our vehicle to get there, right?
No doubt.
And I think that's what you do. I think that's what C. Vivian Stringer does. I think that's what Eddie Robinson did. He raised men. He talks about leadership being a fight for the hearts of young men.
Yep.
And I think that's what we do. And so I know we got to get you out of here. So I got 3 questions for you. We're going to go fast, though.
Okay.
Really, probably 4. What are you reading right now, Coach? Tell the people what you're reading.
Oh, man, I'm reading a few things. Well, I read different. I'm reading a book called Speaking to Excel.
Okay.
By a man named James Amp. He's a very good speaker. It's a book that I got from a coaching colleague maybe 3 years ago. And he gave it to me at the Final Four. And, I never had read it. And I wanted to improve in my speaking. I want to get better. And I just started reading this book, and it's an unbelievable read.
Okay.
Unbelievable read.
Okay.
I'm reading a book called The Way of the Superior Man by Dave Dita. It's a book that I really wish that I read in my 20s. I think it provides a lot of really good insight into a lot of what we strive to, our perceptions of what manhood is.
Right.
And that pertains to how we move in our lives, how we deal with women, how we connect to women. It's an amazing read that I recommend to young men. Another book that I'm reading is Organize Tomorrow Today.
Okay.
I'm always striving to manage my time better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a book by a man named Jason Selk. Really good read on just providing different strategies, how to be just better with your organization of your time. The other thing I'll say, I'm not reading a book, but I'm writing a book. I'm writing right now, Will. I started this journey of writing a book 3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And,
Okay.
And I let myself stop me from writing and stop me from, you start talking about imposter syndrome and who am I to write a book and all those different things. And
who are you not?
Will people want to read my story? And I got to a point, man, I paid for it. I paid for that thing 3 years ago. I feel like somebody sucker punched me and ran off. So, I had this time, and I just start getting my thoughts down, man. And I think there's some experiences that I've had that I'd like to share them.
Right. What
like
platform is that?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you said you paid for it. What platform are you writing that on? Tell the people.
I went through a self-publishing company. It's called Self-Publish in 30 Days.
Okay.
And an amazing group of people who've been very patient with me through this process. But I'm just at a point where I want to complete that project.
Right.
Because I think we got a couple different books in us. I think this is just my first book. There's some other things that I've been compelled to write about. I have a sincere love for reading, and I need to. That came from my mother.
Awesome.
My mother, when my mother got pregnant with me, my mother was studying to be a librarian.
Oh, wow.
And my grandmother, who I spoke about, was an educator. Was a longtime teacher in the Philadelphia school district, and was a guidance counselor in the Philadelphia school system. Okay. But she passed that love of reading on to my mother, and my mother passed it on to me. So for me to have an opportunity, to write a book that I can hand to my mother,
right,
who loves to read, that's exciting to me. So
right, absolutely. That's, man.
I'll tell you something else I read, and I think it's important for your listeners. I have 5 journals down here that I've written in over the last, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years that I've written in. And I go back, Will, and I reread my old journal.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I find it empowering. And think of it in terms of, I have in one journal, I want to start a podcast. I want to start a business. I want to start a website. And you go back and you see those things that you wrote down.
Right.
And I think, as readers, we don't understand the power of seeing our own writing. Right. And how impactful that can be on our psyche and on our mental. So I go back and I read my old journals. I spend a lot of time. I've been journaling on this conversation, with you and I today. So I think that's important.
Yeah, that's huge, man. That's huge. I never even thought about that. Because usually, I guess from a catharsis perspective, we usually tell people, write it down and let it go.
Yeah.
But if you're writing for a different purpose, obviously, or even from that, why not? I mean, unless it's something that you need to obviously let go, or release, I should say, in a positive way, not let go.
Right.
I stopped saying let go. I need to stop saying that because you're not gonna let go of certain things. But anyway, all right. So let me ask you this. Here's the next question: when you're walking, Listening to music. What's in the headphones if you're not on a podcast? Music wise, what we listening?
I a lot of times it's a podcast or an audio book.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you a bunch of stuff. Well, I listen to on YouTube. I listen to a man named Earl Nightingale.
Right.
Earl Nightingale is one of the first. Was one of the first leaders in personal development. Those recordings are from the 50s.
Okay.
A lot of them are from the early 50s, and they still resonate now. I would encourage your listenership to listen to one of his greatest is something called The Strangest Secret.
Okay.
I listened to a podcast called Earn Your Leisure.
Okay.
It's an entrepreneurial podcast with a lot of young entrepreneurs, a lot of this generation entrepreneurs. Like, I listen to one where a guy talks about how he started a thriving business through vending machines.
Okay.
So it gives you a lot of really deep information on how people started different businesses, but also the challenges and adversities that they've gone through, to get through. Of course, I listen to your podcast. I listen to the Sets for Life podcast by Joy Walker. Joy has been an unbelievable part of my journey. She was the editor for my podcast. Joy helped me on my book writing journey. She helped me on my podcast journey. She's one of my coaches. I look at, you're one of my coaches. You and Lizette are my coaches. I think of these things that we get to listen to.
Right.
These mentors, these coaches. Some of the coaches that we listen to aren't alive anymore. I'm a big listener of Wayne Dyer, who passed away a few years ago. He talks a lot about the power of inspiration. I think I listen to a lot of things when I walk, but I think it's also important for consuming information. I think it's important that we do it in our vehicles also.
Right.
How I first came upon, listening to personal development information. I met with a financial advisor, Will.
Okay.
And he asked me, was I a Rhodes Scholar? And, I thought it was a trick question. And he came out with this book of CDs of Wayne Dyer. And he let me borrow them. And I started listening to things in my car. I'm going back to when we used to put CDs in the car.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And so that was really big in my personal development journey. But I'm always, Hernando Planels has an amazing podcast called the Be Contagious Leadership.
Yes. Yes.
That's my next one. Yeah, Hernando is another one of my coaches. There's a gentleman named Odell McCants who has a podcast called Beyond the Whistle.
Yes.
He talks to a lot of different people around the sports space, and understanding how you can coach and also build businesses. And I think that's important for us as coaches to know, Will, that we can do more than just wear a logo of a school, that there's more to us and more that we can create. I'm always open, man. I'm always open to something new, to new podcasts or new learning material. So
right. Absolutely. All right. Now my last one, this is going to be the toughest question outside of how you build great ancestors. Really, yeah, it's going to be the toughest. Now I'm telling you, it's tough now. So don't get upset. I need your top three rap groups of all time?
Woo!
3.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't say rappers.
Any order. Any order?
It's up to you. You can go 3, 2, 1. You can go 1, 2, 3, or you can go just 3. Up to you. You don't have to designate.
No order.
Up to you.
Tribe Called Quest.
Boom. We on the world tour with Muhammad, my man.
See. All right. So
I told you I was gonna get you.
You gotta give me some leeway. So
I told you.
When I say a Tribe Called Quest, I need to really say the Native Tongue family.
Oh, I see what you did there. I see what you done hedged your bet.
I need to say the Native Tongue family because that encompasses a Tribe Called Quest. It encompasses De La Soul, who I'm a big De La listener, still to this day.
Yep. The
Jungle Brothers, Queen Latifah.
There you go.
That Native Tongue family was huge, has been huge for me.
I see what you did there.
I would say rap groups. I would say Little Brother. There's a group called Little Brother. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Little Brother. Little Brother is a group based out of they're based out of Durham, North Carolina. They've been out since the early 2000s to early to mid 2000s. I'm very well. I need music that sticks to your bones. So I want to listen to people who have something to say. That just like we talk about listening to podcasts and personal development, I want to listen to music that lifts me.
Right.
And then the last group, I would say, since you've only given me 3.
You need more, Coach?
No, I don't. The last group, and again, this is no order. It would be Black Star, most definitely. Wale.
There you go. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. That they have all 3 of those groups are groups that I still listen to this day who had oh man.
Yes, it's a setup. It's a setup.
Because I didn't talk about the Roots.
Never.
I listen to a lot of stuff. So I'm going to take leeway, and those are my 4 groups: the Roots, Black Star, Little Brother, and the Native Tongue family.
There you go. Because if you didn't put the Roots in your list,
yeah,
I'm gonna just throw this one out there because I'm being devilish now. But and I'm gonna let you get growing. You ain't say a word about Outkast.
And you know what's crazy?
I set you up.
Is that one of the most impactful songs that I love is "Liberation" by Outkast. Like Aquemini is one of my all-time favorite albums.
Right.
Like that Outkast, yeah, you got me too, man.
I had to. It was necessary.
You got me. But there's so many groups. Will you could say, you say Outkast. I could go to Texas and the Ghetto Boys when I was coming up.
Yep.
NWA.
Yep.
It's so many. You just gave me 3. You set me up, man.
I set you up. I had to do it. I had to do it. You got the brown sugar question. I'm getting folks on the group. So if you coming on next for the podcast, you better get your list right. Don't come in here with no Zaboomba Foo list.
Oh man, you got me too.
All right, Coach. Now please tell everybody, man, how can they find you? How can people get this bigger than the ball on their campus? Talk to us.
Well, first and foremost, Will, thank you for having me on. And this is you know, people need to know, man, these are conversations you and I, all we did was put a camera.
That's
and
it.
all, you know, these are conversations you and I have every day, man. And I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for our relationship. I'm thankful for our thought partnership, you know, and for the opportunity to be on your platform. First and foremost, you can connect with us Bigger Than the Ball. And my number is 302-367-3360. You can follow me on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Coach KA20. Also, you can follow the hashtag It's Bigger Than the Ball. Our website is www.itsbiggerthantheball.com. Behind me, you see the avatar for our podcast.
Yep.
It's Bigger Than the Ball podcast. We are on Apple platforms, Stitcher. I want to say, I believe we have some episodes up on YouTube as well. You can also access the podcast on our website. I am always looking to connect with anyone, organizations, people, coaches, student athletes, parents, anyone that's invested and wants to grow their awareness as it pertains to how we move and help this next generation of leaders.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important that we take the time to see. We have to see past our time.
Right.
There's a quote that stands out to me. It says that the faces of the future are looking back at us and praying that we can see past our time. And that has kind of always stood with me, and recognizing it, and it speaks to your platform as well, Will. And you know, we're working to impact change in a time that we won't see.
Right.
So thank you, Will. Man, this was great, man. This was great. I'm glad that we were able to get on and do this today.
Yes, sir. We thank you. We thank you. We thank you. I mean, it's like I said to you before, Coach, I know people get it twisted, but we have no sponsors for this podcast. We have no advertisement. What we got is us. And like they used to say about Nelly and them, dirty ENT, we all we got. And that's all we need. But we appreciate you. We love you to life. We want to thank Mason for allowing you to sit there and wax with me for such a long time. And it's man, I'm gonna tell you what, Coach, this is awesome, man. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, man. Please give Lizette and Omri my best.
Yes, sir.
And the family, man. I love you guys. Please continue to stay safe. You know, I love you, man. I appreciate you all so much. I know that you understand and recognize it, but I need to tell you that I love and appreciate you and Lizette, man. Thank you.
And we love you too. So you make sure you take care of yourself and the people around you. Little Mason, we need him to lead. You know, Omri and we need running partners. We don't need
no doubt. And that's what it. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about in creating ancestors. How do we bridge? How do we bridge it?
Yeah.
Wu-Tang Clan been doing it since day one.
Hey, and they wasn't even on the list.
I know.
All right.